We've got a few dedications. Firstly, we're doing the learning Le'ilun Shama Esther Bat Benjamin Van Devin, the mother of Hillel Van Devin, and also for the Refuah Shlema of Shmuel Aaron Ben Ruchel, who is currently in hospital, one of our attendees. And we're hoping that he will come back very, very quickly. And also for the Le'ilun Neshama of Mordechai Israel Tzvi Ben Moshe Aaron, whose yahrzeit is this month. Okay. And of course, the class itself is sponsored by our dear friend Shimon Grant, for Refuah Shlema for his dear wife, Bereshit Felicie Bat Simon. Thank you for being a pillar of support of the Alshech Academy.
Shavua Tov, everybody. We are on page Nun Bet 52 in the first column on the right side, the paragraph Vihine. We were talking about the curse of the earth and the spirit of impurity that had settled upon it after the Shekhinah had left, in which now she would voluntarily sprout forth things that were useless to man or harmful, like kots v'dardar, thistles and thorns, and also that which she produces with the toil of man engaged in agricultural activity that he needs to produce the staple will only produce in a form that requires so much filtering and the discarding of all kinds of useless material like the husk and the bran and the chaff and the straw. So we talked about that, and then we said that in the end it says that this will be the state of the earth till man returns to the land from which he was taken from, for he is dust, and to dust he will return. And we contrasted the land that he was taken from to the dust that he will return, and the Alshech gave us a beautiful pshat on the land that he was taken from is the land of the Makom HaMikdash, the earth of the place where the Mizbeach was, which is the place of his atonement. That was the earth that was taken to fashion his body. And the Alshech HaKadosh is saying that when he returns ultimately to the place where he was taken from, means in the incarnation of David HaMelech, he will return to the Beit HaMikdash, and that will be the moment where the verse from Zechariah that God says that I will remove the spirit of impurity from the earth, that will be then, and only when there's a total removal, or when the Shekhinah is Shora everywhere, that's when the spirit of impurity can leave the earth, not like the Alshech HaKadosh said. He contrasted it to the times of great tzaddikim like Moshe Rabbeinu, where there was Hashrat HaShekhinah in the Mishkan, and David HaMelech, etc. So, we continue. Vihine. Haya makom sheyomar Adam. There is a place, perhaps, that you can entertain that Adam would say, Halo im etaken ma'asai b'tshuva shlema. What if I rectify my actions with a complete repentance? Lama lo yachzor ha'ini keshahaya. Why would the state of the earth not return to how it was? Mibli shuv b'gilgul. Without me having to return in another incarnation.
Beautiful question.
Why can't I just do it here? Why do I have to come back as David and then come back again as Mashiach? Lezeh Amar, and that's why the verse is specifically addressing this point when it says, Ki afar ata, for you are dust now. The Alshech HaKadosh said before, he asked, why does the verse say, you are dust now? He's not dust now. Ki afar ata, you are dust, ve'al afar tashuv, and to the dust you will return. Lomar, that is to say, hine hakol talui b'cha. Everything is reliant on you. Ve'in davar nitkan ad shetitaken ata. And therefore, nothing like the state of the earth external to you can be rectified without you rectifying yourself first. And therefore, you have to go into the dirt that you are made of and rectify that first.
It doesn't really explain why you can't do teshuvah without.
Well, we're gonna flesh it out. V'tikuncha odcha b'chayim yefshar, and to rectify yourself while you are still living now is impossible. Ad tashuv el afar. First, you must decompose and return to the earth. Vehu ki encha ata ma shahayita terem techata, because now you are not in the same state as you were before you sinned. Ki lo hayita afar, before you were not dirt. What do we mean by the dust or the dirt here? Ki gam shena'aseta min ha'afar, even though initially your body was made, fashioned from dust. Halo yitzarcha Hashem be'atzmo yitzira chadasha. God had fashioned you himself, a new creation. So you are uplifted in the fashioning, even though on the material level your ingredients were dirt. When you were being fashioned and created, that was a tremendous upgrade that allowed the dirt itself to be functional on the level of man and to have that exalted cosmic place. Shehikna becha biyadav, that God acquired for you or placed within you from his hands, havaya, an existence, zaka, very, very pure, ukdusha, sapirit, and it had a luminous sanctity. The word sapirit is a reference to the sapphire that's under the Kisei HaKavod, the illumination that shines forth from God's presence, right? It says by description of Matan Torah in the Chumash, it says that there was a livnata sapir, a brick of sapphire. Ach ata, however, now, nistalik mimcha sapiriyut hahu, that sapphire-like shine from the upper worlds has been taken from you. You are bereft of that. Ki nichnasa b'cha zo'amat hanachash, because the impurity, the toxin of the snake has entered into you. Ad sheka'at afarata, to the point where at this moment you are dust. Mishulal haktusha, lacking in the sanctity, shenikneit b'cha, that was acquired within you. Ki fana zivcha, for your splendor, your shine has left you. V'hu masha amruzal, and that's what our sages said. Ki echad me'advarim shenitkalkalu hu zivo, that one of the before we mentioned in Midrash that there were 6 things that were lacking after Adam Rishon sinned, there's an enumeration of things or description in one of the places of Chazal where all the before and after picture, and one of the things mentioned is that he had a splendor that left him. So here the Alshech HaKadosh is referencing that, and he's saying, Shegam ki me'afar na'asa, even though you were made from dirt, nit'ala echuto, its quality had been uplifted. V'haya zachu bahir gam chamro, and even Adam's materiality had been pure and refined, me'ein ruchaniyut, similar in a manner to spirituality. V'ata, now afarata, in contrast to that moment, you are now dirt. Kinit aker echutcha, your quality has been darkened, ka'afar, like dirt. Al yedei zu'amat nachash, through the toxin of the snake. Ve'en lecha takana lashuv el hakodem, and you have no ability in your current state to return to how you were before. Ad asher al afar tashuv, till you return to the dirt. You get interred. Ve'ashuv escha min afar, and then I have to make you again from the dirt. Mishulal zu'amat nachash, again, but without the toxin of the snake, kasher asiticha me'az, like I had made you initially, b'chol hashneimut, with the total perfection, shaya b'cha, that was within you, kavirishana v'hotar, like initially, but even more so. That's referring to afterwards, tchiyat hametim. V'zeh ma'amar Shlomo, and that's what Shlomo HaMelech says in the verse in Kohelet, in the last chapter of Kohelet. It says, V'yashov ha'afar al ha'aretz kishahaya, and the dirt will return to the earth like it was. V'haruach tashuv el ha'elohim, and the spirit will return to God, asher natana, who had initially granted it. Okay, so Shlomo HaMelech mentions there in Kohelet, he says that the dirt has to return ultimately, and the spirit goes back to God. Lomar, that is to say, im haya davar kasher terem yachate adam, if he was still in the same state like before he had sinned, shaguf lo haya afar, that even his body was not just now downgraded to the natural quality of earth, haya chibur v'zivuk haruach, there would still be a connection and a coupling of the ruach, his spirit, the haguf, and his body. Ole yafa, it would still be poised to connect nicely, v'lo yitparadu, and they would not separate. However, ata, now, hagufu afar, the body has become dust. Ech yatmid chiburo im haruach, how could it maintain its connection with the spirit? Lachen, therefore, kol achad yashuv l'sharsho, every element that is comprised in Adam must return to its root, ad yitukan, until he fixes himself. V'yashov ha'afar el ha'aretz k'shahaya, and like Shlomo Melech says, that the dirt will return to the land like it was, terem yutzar Adam, before Adam was fashioned, v'haruach, and the spirit, tashuv el ha'elokim, asher natana. Okay, so the Alshech HaKadosh asks, why does Adam Rishon have to be reincarnated to ultimately achieve this rectification? Because now, he answers, somehow the earth itself that was initially comprised of his body, is not on the state to do that, and it has to be reinterred into the ground, and God has to fashion it again. So now, this is not done when David was born, and this was not done when Mashiach was born, so I'm not sure exactly what this means.
But the problem with all of this is that Adam was created as the being to bring down Shefa from the heaven. And you're saying to me that now that he's eaten from the sin, he's downgraded his status to such a low level that he has to die in order to be reinvented, as it were.
Think about it like this. Adam was initially comprised of all different elements. In order for him to have control over those elements and uplift them, right, he needed to be pure. Now that he has been compromised, each one of those elements themselves need to be purified, and he can't do it in a state where they're integrated into his being. And therefore he has to decompose, they need to be rectified and then come together.
I understand all that. My problem is that how does the earth and the world maintain itself in the meantime until that process has been completed? Because he was created to bring down the Shefa.
Right. So I think the best answer for you is the 26 Dorot till man was able to be Makabel Torah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Mefarnes with Chesed on credit, that ultimately they would write, and that's the 26 Hodul Hashem Kitovs. There you go. Indeed, history had to answer for your question.
Right. So Hashem had to sustain it himself.
Right. And the truth is that none of this was a problem anyway. That was all plan A, because we say that the chitzoniyut of the revelation of God as manifest through the 10 utterances of creation were only the outer vessel for the ultimate pnimiyut, which were the 10 utterances of Matan Torah that were going to come later in history anyway. So Adam Rishon in the current state is only the chitzoniyut of ultimately a door that receives the Torah. Mm-hmm. So there's different ways to look at it in greater strata, but you're alluding to these different elements of reality, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's okay. That's fair.
Yeah, and I just wanted to just dwell a little bit on this idea that he has to, that everything has to remove to go to its source to be purified. Why? I mean, this question that he asks at the beginning, I thought was a great question. I didn't really hear the answer. Mm-hmm. Why isn't it possible for Adam in his combined format to do complete teshuvah without having to disintegrate and purify individually? Why can't he purify as a united being of the four worlds?
Okay. So perhaps it's the same question, perhaps not, but it seems to me, why is it that the tikkun of Adam ultimately is done in history in a collective sense as opposed to an individual? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. It's the same phenomenon, right? Yeah. Yeah. Because he is the collective incorporated in all of them. So let's say you're a doctor and you have a patient, and systemically there's a shutdown. The system is shutting down. You have to focus on the individual elements and tinker them for the whole system to work. You can't systemically expect the system to do its part and introduce some sort of element that will be corrective and expect the system to heal the body, because the system itself doesn't work. So you have to compartmentalize and deal with each detail, and then hopefully in a collective it'll achieve a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. Right? Mm-hmm. Is that a good mashal?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
It's the beginning of a way to think about it.
Yeah.
Right? So, meaning this whole stage of creation is essentially a systemic thing that's in its perfected sense. It was designed only to work as perfected. And then it broke down. So now that demands, and that's really the plan B. That that everything ends up from the ground up and achieved from the specific to the individual. I'm sorry, to the collective.
Right.
And that's why there's always a demand for achdut. It's not muvan me'elav. That all the elements in creation are all, meaning they're operating as if there's no overall map that holds them all together without the awareness of that. And therefore there's no guarantee that they all can form, that they'll grow together to achieve their potential as such. That's the problem. And humanity paid heavy prices throughout its history, that ultimately there was always a choice. There was a piece, a dross that had to be stripped. And then God says, Bal yidach mimenu nidach, that God is committed that every level, every aspect of his creation gets rectified. But then, once there's a humanity, there's the goyim and the Am Yisrael, and then by we talk about this many times. The Ramchal talks about a Matan Torah. Since the rest of the Umot Alam didn't come, so now the Shivim Umot can't receive a tikkun on their root. So there's always like this, the 4/5 in Mitzrayim, and yet from the Arizal, and this is very apropos to Shovavim, what's happening now during the parsha that we're reading from Shemot through Truma Tetzaveh, that this is a time to rectify the sins of the pigam that Adam achieved in the 130 years following the story, which is the Dor Hamabul, and then the Dor of Bavel, of the Migdal Bavel. So the Arizal says that there were whole generations that were the holiest sparks of Adam Rishon that God was not content to let go to waste, and He went through this whole history of humanity to refine them and to try to take them out from the klipot. So you have this tension here between, like, there's all the, God is saying, okay, Avraham had Yitzchak ben Ishmael, and Yitzchak has Yaakov and not Esav, and yet at the same time God is not willing for any of the sparks, for the Sitra Achra to retain any of the sparks in this great, the way the mystics read the history of Galut and Geulah and redeeming the sparks and the shattered vessels, all that stuff. There's a total rectification, even though in history, when you look at it in the context of Adam, and we're talking about, the collective soul splintering into, and how we are called Atem Kruyim Adam, the Navi Yechezkel says, we're the rectification. That's the avot that started in the journey in human history of taking humanity forward to rectifying. God had a vision that Am Yisrael was supposed to be the Bechar and bring all the Umot Olam on track, etc. So there is all this story, but in terms of the actual elements, if we just look in Gan Eden, let's say, and we talk in the microcosm, right, to chart this phenomenon, it seems that on the level of collective, it can't work. So he has to decompose, and then there has to be a rebuilding from the bottom up.
Right.
That's the best I could do to address that at the
Thank
moment. Okay, so let's read further. O Yomar, another point. So it says, Ad shuvcha el ha'adama asher lukachta mimena, until you return to the land to which you were taken from. Ad sha'a achat kodem tchiyat hametim. This will be the moment. There will be a moment of decomposition, just an hour before the resuscitation of the dead. V'hu uvda de Rabbi Achai bar Yoshia, and that is the story of Rabbi Achai bar Yoshia, she'amar al pasuk zeh, that he said on this verse, she'atzadikim na'asim afa sha'achat kodem tchiyat hametim. We say that the righteous ones, they don't decompose, because even in this world, they have uplifted their body to such a spiritual state that it has achieved some level of eternity, and therefore they don't decompose. And yet, they need to experience tchiyat hametim. So he says, Rabbi Chai says, that they will just decompose for the last hour. Like right before, a moment before Tchiyat HaMetim, that's when they'll decompose. And that's when they will be rebuilt with a new body. Okay?
Where's that source of that?
In the Talmud, I believe. So actually, we're going to back it up with another famous story from Baba Batra. So the Alshech HaKadosh is interpreting Rabbi Achai to coincide with this idea he said before. That right now we've been talking about this necessity for the earth to be refined from its spirit of impurity. So you can't have Tchiyat HaMetim from, before we said, Mashiach is going to waltz into the Beit HaMikdash, and the Shekhinah will be total, and that will be a time when there will be no impurity anymore. When will this impurity be taken away? A moment before Tchiyat HaMetim, because God wants to make new bodies for the tzaddikim the way they're meant to be in this refined state, like Adam Rishon Kodem Achet. So obviously, it'll be the moment right before then. Okay, so Ki az tihya adama zaka. That's when the earth will be refined, mituma legamre, totally from its impurity. Va'adam lo shavel afaro b'moto. And we know there's this fantastic story in the Gemara and Baba Batra that there was Rabbi Benah. Rabbi Benah was very preoccupied with marking graves so that the Kohanim would not become impure. They wouldn't wander into unmarked graves and become Tamei Met. And in those days, apparently, Marat Machpelah did not have markers in any way that demarcated that. So there's a whole story of Rabbi Benah where he entered into the Ma'ara and he met Eliezer Eved Avram, and he saw Yaakov Avinu, he saw Avram Avinu and Sarah, and etc., etc., and he wanted to see Adam Rishon, or he wanted to see Yaakov Avinu, and they said Shufra, the beauty of Yaakov Avinu was mamash like the refined Adam Rishon, and he couldn't see Adam Rishon. They wouldn't allow him to. It was like looking directly at the Shekhinah. So the Gemara says, Sha'amar l'Rabbi Benah, V'chein, Ve'adam, and Adam Rishon, lo shavel afaro b'moto. When he died, he did not decompose. V'chein nira, and so it appears, Mimasha Amr b'Gemara, the story that the Gemara tells in Baba Batra, Sha'amar l'Rabbi Benah, that Eliezer, the servant of Avram, told to Rabbi Benah, B'diyukni atzma lo tistakel. You can't look at his direct form. Ki odenu kayam begufo b'ma'ara. Obviously, that means that he was still whole, right? They were. The story in the Gemara says that Avram and Sarah looked like they were sleeping. They weren't even buried. They were lying on top of the ground, and everybody there, right? He asked to see other people, meaning they were fully formed. They had not experienced any decomposition. And in fact, at the end of the story, Rabbi Eliezer shoos Rabbi Benah out of there. He says, I have to wake up the Avot now because they have to pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was Rosh Chodesh, and apparently once a month they go and they pray to God. So Adam
collectively they pray to God?
Yeah, it seems to me
I thought I read somewhere in the Alshech that they never prayed collectively because the prayer would be too strong and it would like bring Mashiach.
That is so fascinating. Then you have to look in the Gemara over there because the Gemara seems to say, from what I understand, the Gemara over there says is saying that at least once a month, HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at the schuyot of the Avot, and you know we reference them all together every time we say Shemona Esrei. That's we drop that membership card so that we can pray. So I'm not sure exactly what that means. I'm not familiar with that, but that would be an interesting contrast. You can look into that if you like. Okay, so what we infer from this is the Gemara practically says that Adam Rishon was lying there fully formed, so he had not decomposed yet. So obviously what Rabbi Chai is saying, that the tzaddikim decompose a moment before Tchiyat HaMetim. So the verse over here is not saying that Adam Rishon will immediately decompose. He's only going to decompose later. So this afar is meant to happen later. This afar being refined, and that will coincide with the afar being refined for all, because all the righteous are meant to experience Tchiyat HaMetim then. Okay? So he's putting it all together. And even though after Adam Rishon's repentance from his sin, Shelo Yashuv al Afaro ad hazman haniskar, he still cannot receive that ultimate rectification because he's not going to decompose till the very end of time. Lazeh Amar, and therefore the verse says, Ki afar ata, now you are in this lower state of afar that needs to be rectified. Kilomer mipiat atzmecha, in terms of your own status. V'gam lo tiyeh kach harbe, but don't worry, you will not be like that for a long time. Ki im shivatcha el ha'afar bilvad, only at the moment that you become dirt alone will you be, meaning now you are destined to be dirt, but that will only occur for a small time. Ki miyad alcha gamalo, because immediately after that happens, I'm going to immediately bring you up again and fashion you in your new rectified form. V'zeu amro, and that's what the verse says, ve'el afar tashuv, you will return to the dust. You will decompose. V'lo amar ve'afar tihiyah, and it doesn't say, and you will be dirt, because you will only be in that state for a moment. Kilomar, to say, hashiva bilvad beli hatmadati yotcha sham harbe. I will return you to that state without you having to remain that way in a sustained period of time. Kisha achat, just a moment, kodem tchiyat hametimhu, it will only be right before the resuscitation of the dead, kam dubar, like we have said.
It seems like it's almost delaying the rectification. The whole
Well,
person.
that will happen whenever it has to happen. That can't happen until it's time for Mashiach to come.
Yeah.
That's just, it's
like
not
we're in a
dependent on
holding
that.
bay.
Yeah, it could have been immediately. The point is that he won't be in a decomposed state for longer than he has to. Okay? Which is the fate of all the tzaddikim. Okay, one last point that he mentions. O yechaven ba'amro. Alternatively, it could intend the verse when it says, El afar tashuv, that you will return to dust. Lomar, to say, Ki gam shetiyeh afar, even when you will be in the state of dirt. Lo tishveh la'afar ha'aretz, you will not be equal with the dirt of the earth. Ki eze yeter echut yiyeh ba'afar gufcha al sheyadav yitbarach yatzur otcha mimenu. You will always be in a higher quality than that dust, because your body itself was made by the hands of God who fashioned you from it. Al ken lo amar va'afar tashuv. Therefore it doesn't say, and to dirt you will return, because it's impossible for him to return like that. Ki em el afar, to the dirt, meaning even the dirt that decomposes and lies in the earth will be is of a different quality. Ki ilu eincha afar kamo, you are not dirt like it. Ki im ba'elav, you are just coming to it. V'gam ba'amro afar pam shenit, and why does it say afar twice? V'lo amar ve'elav tashuv, to it, using a pronoun, you will return. Yoreh ki afar acher be'echutu, it's to contrast that there are two afars here. So it's some sort of consolation, I guess he's saying, that even the dirt that you're in is still a dirt that it won't totally be negated to the dirt of the earth. Okay? There we go.
How are we doing?
I don't know.
So we've still got 15 minutes.
Well, there is another small piece here. It says in the verse that now it says that Adam called to Chava, he gave her name Chava, for she is the mother of all living things.
Yeah.
Okay. Vayikra ha'adam shem ishto Chava, and Adam called to his wife the name Chava, ki hi haita em kol chai, for she was, past tense, the mother of all living things.
That's interesting.
Not now.
Picked up that.
She was. So she didn't get a name. Now she gets a name, and it's a reference to something that she was, but no longer. That
Well,
doesn't.
the Midrash suggests that they had the children before this event. So.
But why does it say that she was? She's going to have children after this too.
Yeah.
She's still a mother,
Yeah.
okay, and if her name is for this reason, it should have been Chaya, not Chava. You know, Chava is very, very similar to the Targum's name for the snake, Chivya. I'll leave it at that. Anyway, let's see what the Alshech HaKadosh has to say. Hine al shahita em kol chai, because she was the mother of all life. Also, was she the mother of all life? She was just the mother of humans, right? That always bothered me. Okay. Ra'ui tikare chaya. She should have been called Chaya. And indeed, we name our daughters Chaya. We also name our daughters Chava, but we name our daughters Chaya. Chaya could mean she lives, or it could mean embodied life force, like you call wild animals. Why do you call wild animals chayot? Because they're free, untamed life form. Okay? In last week's Parsha, one of my favorite psukim in the whole Torah, the mialdot ha'ivriot, the midwives, they answer to Paro, and they explain, they say, well, we didn't have time. By the time we get there, they already, ki nashim ha'ivriot, the Jewish women, chayot hena, they're animals. They're strong, vital, primal beings. Okay? Ach lezen didaktek, but specifically to this, we will take note. Amro hi hayta. The verse says she was. It doesn't say she is now. Umin haroy, and it should have said, Yomar, it should have said, Ki hi em kochai, for she is the mother of all life. So the fact, it's not a coincidence here, this is a big deal that it says past tense. Ve'od, and further, lama kara la shem acher hakilkov la mitchila. Why is she getting a name now? She didn't get a name before? Obviously, this is her new name. Because she is no longer who she was before. Ach yomar, ata karatiha Chava. Adam saying, now I will call her Chava. Laharot masha chasra, to point out that which she is lacking. To remind her, not to remind her, but to relate to her in her fallen state. Ki hine mitchila hi hayta em kochai. Initially she was the mother of all living things, meaning eternal beings, immortals. Ru'ya likare chaya. She was worthy of being called chaya, the source of life. Achata, now he aim kol mate. She's the mother of all dead creatures. All death in the world, not just her own children, but all that is mortal now is because of her.
It's very, it's a very severe, blowing name, isn't it?
It's hard to sugarcoat the truth, especially when the truth, especially when it doesn't help things. Here, you have to understand, the only time we don't remind anybody of anything that can cause them pain is when there's nothing they could do about it. When it's totally your responsibility, you're doing a disservice for the person to allow them to not face the truth. The question is, why doesn't Adam have a different name in the fallen state?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a fantastic question. Because he's the one that named everybody. He is the namer.
Did he not give himself a name?
Yes, he did.
Oy vey, oy vey, oy vey. You know, the Ar Chaim HaKadosh actually points out that there's a difference, although he would have to explain it to me and how we've used it until now. But he says there's a difference between Adam and Ha'adam. And he says Ha'adam is man in his fallen state because the gematria is lower than Adam.
How is Ha'adam lower than Adam?
No, I'm sorry. It's here. It's like this. Not lower, higher. It's Adam is 45, which is the gematria of one of the names of God. And with Ha'adam, it's 50, which is the fallen state.
Why is 50, the fallen state, higher than 45?
50 is a fallen state. 45 happens to be the gematria of one of Hashem's names, Shem Ma. Right? There's Ab, Sag, Ma, and Ban. Right? 72, 63. Right? 45 and 52. And 50, the Gemara says, why is there no Nun in Ashrei? There's Ashrei is according to the alphabet, Aleph through Taf, but there's no Nun. Because Nun stands for Nefilah, falling. So David HaMelech answered that when he said, Somech Hashem l'kol ha'noflim, v'zokev l'chol ha'noflim. I'm sorry, Somech Hashem l'chol ha'skufim, Somech Hashem l'chol ha'noflim. God is a support for all that fall, right? V'zokev, and he straightens l'chol ha'kfufim. Right, so Nun is Nefil over there. So the Gemara is very mysterious. Why is Nun? Nun is, that's the only letter, that's the only word that starts with Nun. Why is Nun always associated with Nefilah, the shortcomings of man? So the answer my father told me, although there are many answers, is that Nun is destined for, it's always a reminder of failure because it's the one level that Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't achieve. Shar HaNun, the 50th day.
And yet 50th is the culmination of Shavuot.
We know 50 is very high. That's the whole point. The whole point is 50. It's the highest, and even other Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the highest, never achieved it. So therefore, inherent in a mention of Nun or 50 is the fact that it even escaped Moshe Rabbeinu, that it can't get there. So somehow that means that rooted in Nun, in this current state, is Nefila. But anyway, the Aruch HaKodesh says this in Chumash, in either Bereshit, somewhere in this week's Parsha, I believe. I'm sorry, in Bereshit. The point is that other than that, I can't think of any fallen state referenced in a different name given to Adam after the sin. But anyway, so the Alshech HaKadosh is saying that really this is a tremendous downgrade. Initially she was Chaya, and now she's Chava. So how do we understand the downgrade? What is this Vav, the Yud becoming a Vav, a reference to? So she was Ru'uya likareh Chaya. She was worthy of being called Chaya. However, Ata hi em kol met. She is the mother of all. She is responsible for the death of all. Sheba'avura, because of her, kulam yamutu, all things that were invested with a living of vitality will ultimately expire. V'yashuv el ha'afar, and they will decompose. They will return to the earth. Kol ha'arba yesodot, all the different elements that comprise their being. Al ken, therefore, al chesron ha'arba yesodot, on the loss, the decomposition of the four elements that make up living creatures, yachseru mehayud shel chaya, they will be removed from the yud in the name chaya, dalid, 4, representing the four elements, v'tishayer vav, and 10 minus 4 equals 6, that's the vav. V'al kain, and therefore tikareh chava, now she is only to be called chava. She's lacking in the perfection of the incorporation of those four elements. V'al kain, and therefore nismach inyan zeh el amro ve'al afar tashuv. That's why this statement of Adam giving her the new name is immediately on the heels of God telling Adam that he was going to return to the dust. And there you have it.
And actually she is Chaya because she gave to all the animals to eat, so they also became mortal. So she is
Chava, not Chaya b'Chava, right?
Yeah, no, but originally you said why are animals called Chaya as well?
No, I was asking. Yeah, so what are you explaining?
So I'm saying she terminated the living aspect of even the animals.
So, and therefore she's responsible for their life or their death?
For their death.
Right, and therefore, right, she shouldn't be called Chaya. But I'm saying, even in terms of the mother of all life, why is she the mother of all animals? She's just the mother of humans. So we're saying here that mother doesn't mean the species that she'll spawn, but rather that she's responsible for life and death, which is something which is shared by all living creatures. That was the contrast that we were saying. All right? Okay. Hopefully next time we will have happier things to read in the Alshech HaKadosh.